Good morning, everybody. That was neat. I just walked up on stage and it got quiet. Welcome, everybody. My name is Jonathan Strauss. I'm the president and CEO of PPPC, and I'm excited to welcome you back to NATCON. So thank you, everybody, for being here. We know there's more people who are going to filter in as the morning goes on. But thank you. Welcome back. It's been 3 years since we gathered here together for NATCON, and we're excited to be back here. And so we've got a great event that starts now. So thank you, everybody, for coming this morning to join us. Just a few housekeeping things before we do get started. We are recording this session. We know there was a lot of interest in the topic and not everybody can be here. Some of our suppliers are still setting up their booths and some distributors weren't able to join us. So we have a Q&A mic set up on my left here. So when we get to Q&A, I'd ask you to please try to use that mic just so we can capture your great questions. So I want to just thank everybody for coming out this morning and for everybody for supporting NATCON. It's a commitment to come and be back with us. We appreciate all the suppliers who are exhibiting, our sponsors, PCNA, who is our NATCON sponsor this year, so thank you to the team at PCNA. And make sure today you come by our booth and get your wristband for the party tonight, our awards and party, with the party being sponsored by Debco. So come by our booth or by Debco to pick up your wristband for tonight. We're really excited to have a new format for our awards and to really have a great party tonight to celebrate the industry. Just as a reminder, the show is 10 to 4 today, the trade show, and then 10 to 3 tomorrow, and clients are invited to join tomorrow with member distributors. So make sure you're out seeing everybody. Remember that we've got WE coming up. Some of our WE leaders are here at September 30th and October 1st in Niagara-on-the-Lake. There are still a few spots, and that's a literal term, not a marketing term. There are a few spots left. So if you haven't already made a decision to be at WE, the ladies in this room who have been to WE will tell you it's a fantastic opportunity. So make sure that you get that on your radar. And if you're new to the industry or you have colleagues who are new to the industry, it's a great place to meet people. So I'm told. I'm actually going to make an appearance for the first time at WE this year. So I promise not to crash the party. Sharky, if you're coming with me, you'll let me know. We're excited about that. So without further ado, let's get into our panel. So this morning, focusing on the triple bottom line, people, planet, and profits. There's a lot to this topic. We're really excited about it. So I'm going to ask our panelists to come and join me. I'll sort of do a bit of introduction as they come up and join us. We've got a lot of great stuff to talk about today. But this is, the dynamics of a highly volatile environment that characterizes today's society really demands professionals who are capable of engaging in the process of continued innovation, adaptation, and learning. And so we've got a great panel here who are going to talk to us about that it's just not enough to curate and place new products and services in the marketplace. It's also necessary to recognize and relentlessly pursue new opportunities that create and sustain social value. Within this context, sustainable entrepreneurs are now called upon to play a major role by identifying unique opportunities that help society resurge from the economic downturn and promote a prolific, inclusive, and economically sustainable development. Rather than focusing merely on profits, these businesses must also consider their overall effect on stakeholders and their impact on the planet. So, good morning to our panel. This is a great way to kick off NATCON. We're really excited to have this panel together. What's interesting about our panel this morning is all of them said somebody else on the panel had to be on the panel for them to say yes. So it was kind of this circular thing. So I think there's a high level of mutual respect on this panel. I had a chance to speak with all of them in the last week as we come together. So I'm going to, I think, just ask you to each introduce yourselves. But we have Jamie McCabe of McCabe Promotional Advertising, Tara Milburn of Ethical Swag, Denise Taschereau of Fairware, and Heidi Reimer of Botanical Paperwork. So I think that, Tara, I'll ask you to start. We've got 2 mics for that the 4 of you can pass back and forth there. But before we just start a discussion, just tell us a little about yourselves and provide your opening remarks on triple bottom line and your focus and why you said yes to us to be here today. And then I'm going to sit down and join you.
Awesome. Thank you. And it's my pleasure to be here. I started Ethical Swag, and I think the first phone call I made was to Denise because I don't come from the industry, I didn't know a lot about the industry, but I saw a disconnect between what corporations and governments were saying around sustainability and what they were actually putting their logo on. And I was like, why is that? And when I looked, I was like, okay, I think there's an opportunity there, and I called you. Do you remember that? That was a long time ago. And for me, I started Ethical Swag because I just wanted to sort of redefine what business was. I think that I watched over my 25-year career that there was everybody working really, really hard to make a handful of people very, very rich. And I was like, there's something wrong with this. You know, when I was growing up, the local barber could raise a family of 4, and now my daughter can't afford to buy a house. And she has a great job and an education, and I'm like, there's something really wrong with how we define success in corporations. And so I set out to create a business and redefine what success looks like. And people, planet, and profit has always been at the core of why I founded it. Our articles of incorporation are changed to have people, planet, and profit as equal measures of success. So we can't have anybody say you're paying somebody too much. You're not maximizing shareholder value. Those kinds of things, we just take them off the table to begin with because it's just really important, from my perspective, that we redefine what success looks like in business.
Thank you. Heidi?
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Heidi from Botanical Paperworks. And Botanical Paperworks is a manufacturer. We manufacture seed paper, which is a special eco-paper made from waste. So we take paper waste, we turn that into a pulp and incorporate seeds, and then we turn that into a variety of promotional products, from bookmarks and journals and business cards. And the neat thing is that you can plant it. So when you're done with it, you plant it, and then it grows flowers or herbs or vegetables. And then that grows food for your own cooking, or habitat for pollinators like bees and butterflies. So we've got this really uniquely sustainable product, but it all started actually because of my mom in the classroom. She was a teacher, and she was driven crazy, I'll say, by students who would take a piece of paper and scribble something on it and put it into the garbage. So she was looking for something to do with that waste, and she learned to make paper by hand. And then she did my wedding invitations, and people loved the wedding invitations, and we said, we think we have a business idea here. And what is a business idea ultimately? It's a product that we can produce, but that solves a problem that you as the distributors and the end users have. And so at that time, we started making papers. We're in Winnipeg, so papers that used prairie grasses and discarded flowers and any kind of botanical matter that we could find. We morphed eventually into the seed paper business, and still we seek to create products that solve a problem. So they answer the question of how can we demonstrate our sustainability? How can we swap out products that are promotional but don't create waste or do good for the environment? So these are the questions that are always at the forefront of our mind. How can we deliver value to you, our customers, through our seed paper? And now also our soaps that we're producing in-house that are vegan and, of course, wrapped in seed paper. And I didn't realize that we were triple bottom line focused until I started reading about the concept in different business publications. And then I realized when I left the biotech corporation that I had been working for 25 years ago with a vision to do differently and treat people better and to consider the planet in addition to profit, that gave me a name for what we were doing. And we'll talk later, I'm sure, about specific policies and specific things that we do, but we'll just say that our mission at Botanical Paperworks, which we co-opted, leave the earth a better place, this is the thing that drives us as we consider profit, planet, and people.
I've got one. So I'm Denise, I'm from Fairware. We're based out in Vancouver, we're a distributor. We have about 40% of our business is in the US, so we have a pretty good footprint in the US. And we started 18 years ago, and like I think most of us, started from day one with a real focus on sustainability. I came to This industry, like many of you by accident, I was the sustainability director at Mountain Equipment Co-op for 8 years, helping them manage their supply chain impact and operational impacts and all sorts of other things, and got terrible merch from a great brand. Like, it was as simple as that, and had won a vest by one of our beloved brands in Canada that was made in Burma and Myanmar, which at the time had formal sanctions against it as a country for human rights abuses by the Canadian government. And the brand that had, their logo on the left was one of the most ethical financial institutions in the world. The CEO was an advisor to the Dalai Lama, and I remember thinking, wow, that's a mess. And called my friends there that were working in sustainability and said, you're going to end up on the pages of the Globe and Mail if you don't smarten up. There's brand risk here. And that was my introduction to the industry, and where my curiosity started. And so we started Fairware with a mission to try and fill that gap, that opportunity, that need. I mean, it's very similar to Tara, to everyone's story up here. And for us, we don't really think of it through the lens of people, planet, profit, so to speak. We're deeply driven by being a socially just and environmentally responsible business. But I think what's useful for a room like this is, like, how do we really look at it in the day-to-day? And for us, it's supply chain. Like, who are we working with? How are they managing their supply chain, whether it's the product or the people? We look at our own operations, like, how are we running our business? Like, how can we be a different kind of company in the day-to-day? And then we look at community impact, and for us, that's very little philanthropy, in fact, but we're advocates. We're activists as a brand, and we get out there and try to change things at a political and legislative level as business leaders. So, I think it's about the moment in time for our industry to think of sustainability less as maybe a compliance play or a must-to-do or a nice-to-do, and turning it into a strategic imperative to future-proof each of our companies and specifically our industry.
Thanks, Denise. I'm Jamie from McCabe Promotional Advertising in London. My parents started the company in 1981. I joined the company because my dad forced me to over 20 years ago. Just finished school, and he said, "What are you going to do, son?" And I said, "Maybe travel around Europe." And he said, "Bullshit." He said, "You're going to start working for me the next morning." So I stuck with the company until something better came along, but here we are over 20 years later, and I took over as president in 2009. My parents really built the company with a strong foundation of contributing back to the communities that we did business, and like, that was an easy thing to drag forward, and we became B Corp certified about 3 years ago. We don't think of it being triple bottom line focused either. Kind of think of it like being like a campsite, like making our communities a little bit nicer from when we arrived, and that's really our focus, and doing things that feel good. And I remember I listened to an interview at some point, and it was Barack and Letterman, and I can't remember who said what, but someone said to the other, like, I didn't want my kids to ask me in 20 years, so you knew there was a problem and you chose nothing to do about it? And that really, like, stuck hard and made us think a lot, and that's sort of how we move.
So I'm going to already go off script from our order of things, because I promised them that we would have a dynamic conversation. We want to have questions from the audience, but they also said to me in our preparation, all of them said, we want to be very specific. And so let's not just say sustainability is good, treating people is good. Let's actually get into something. So Jamie, you just talked about, yeah, you're on the spot now. You just said, you've got kids, you want to leave, you don't want to have to explain to them why you did nothing. So what are you doing at McCabe to make a difference, to make the world a better place for your kids when it comes to the environment and related things?
And how long is this panel?
I'll let you know when you're done.
Okay, I'll make it. You know what? Why I joined this panel, and it wasn't because I wanted to. I just really wanted to hear these ladies talk about what they're doing, and I just wanted to have a better seat than the rest of you. But and so let me run through this quick. What are the things that we do? And so one of the things that we're doing right now, we have a speaker series this year, And we got together as a team, we talked about, what's important to us and what social issues or causes are important to us. And we bring in industry experts or subject matter experts, and we bring people in person, also virtually, and we'd have like 100 people online and listen to this great speaker, each of the time, and then after the talk, maybe we'd throw a party if it was appropriate, and bring in small vendors and to sell like preserves and hot sauces and sausages and stuff like that. And like we just did that because I think that's just sort of cool, and like, isn't it nice to help out like some really, really small businesses? But we'd sell T-shirts, and all the proceeds would go towards different charities, small charities or national charities, and raise thousands of dollars with each of the initiatives. There's one coming up at the end of September, and we've raised just over $1 million so far right now. Thank you. Yeah, so like that feels really good, and thank you for the applause, Maxie.
It's good you brought some of your colleagues along.
I did. I brought my booster crowd. So yeah. So I don't know. I guess that's an example of one thing that we do. I really enjoy reaching out to clients and prospects and talking about what are you guys into, and here's what I'm into. Like, are there any synergies? And if there are, do you want to do something cool together? I love that approach, and I sort of got tired of going in and say, and this comes in yellow too, and yes, we can get a less expensive one. Like, I just sort of got tired real quick with that, with those sort of conversations, and wanted to have more meaningful conversations with people.
So Tara, we talked as we were preparing for today about the role that distributors and suppliers working together on packaging, on environmental issues, sustainability. Can you talk about how you see as a distributor working with suppliers and how you're working together with your suppliers on sustainability and those kinds of topics?
For sure, yeah. Excuse me. So when I started the company, I looked around and I saw that there was a lot of individuals that were voting with their dollars. They were making choices with how they were purchasing products, with fair trade and organic and with their coffee purchase and all that sort of thing. I was like, how do we leverage the big dollars, right? The corporate dollars. And how can we really start to sort of move the needle? And so that's what we do, and we look for suppliers that are like-minded, and we talk to them about packaging, and we vote with our dollars. So for example, one time we ordered pens, and the supplier was fabulous. They passed all of our compliance requirements, but every pen was individually shrink wrapped. And we were like, wow, and Spectre, for example, we get 500 pens in a bag, right? And it doesn't break down. The pens are still great quality, but think of all the single-use plastics that have now not gone into the landfill. And so we vote with our dollars, and we choose to work with suppliers that make decisions around their packaging. We don't mind if a box shows up and it's beat up because it's been used the second and third time. As long as the product on the inside is great quality and is taken care of, we love to see boxes that have been reused and not a lot of empty space. And we talk to our suppliers about those kinds of things. And I think as an industry, there's so much we can do around voting with our dollars, I think, and channeling business into supply chains and into companies that are like-minded and thinking about these things. And quite frankly, it's cheaper for them.
So I'm glad you said that, because I was going to say, so Heidi, sometimes people think sustainability and they think spending more money. Mm-hmm. But that's not always the answer, right? So can you talk about, as a supplier, how you balance cost of doing business and sustainability and some of the things that you do?
Yeah, sometimes there is a higher cost and sometimes there's a savings. And so as a manufacturer, we love continuous improvement, of course. So always looking to make our production easier, faster, cheaper, better for our employees. And so as an example, switching from plastic to paper wrapping, we've had a jump in our cost because it's more labor intensive and also the cost of the material is higher. So we look to other areas of our production process and our company to offset that. So we don't say, no, we're not going to do it. We say yes, and we are very careful to quantify it. So we love our data, we love our metrics, we love to track and measure new initiatives so that we know exactly what the impact is. Like, for example, at our checkout online, we tell customers that their carbon emissions will be 10 to 20 times greater if they choose air. So we encourage them, if you can ship ground, please do that. You'll have a benefit there. Other times when we are producing something, we do have a cost savings, and then that's wonderful because it's a waste product or part of a waste stream that we can then incorporate. And an example there is that we discovered that we could take the cuttings from our seed paper after it's been printed, and we can repulp that once and then reuse that. And then once that's been done, all of the offcuts we can shred and we turn that into box filler, and there's a market for that. So it's just such an interesting thing to see, and I think creativity and ingenuity is necessary, and thinking outside the box, and also a group of people having input, not just me as CEO. Really, how many ideas come from me? It's from my team members who are working with it all day. That's where the ideas come from. That loops actually back into one of our people priorities where we say, give us your ideas, and then we rapidly implement it, and our team, they love that, the empowerment of seeing that their ideas they're listened to, and we love the ideas because we get the lift in efficiency and cost savings and better value for our customers.
So Denise, your customers come to you not because you sell stuff. They come to you because of your expertise. So what are the questions? I know they're getting more challenging, they're getting deeper. What are the questions that when your clients are coming to you as an expert that they're asking you when it comes to sustainability?
That's a good question. I'm actually going to pick up on the packaging thread because I think it's the next big thing. Suppliers in the room, and part of it is we're having clients now ask us to manage the packaging. So we do things called packaging interventions. So UN Global Compact, they do a conference, we do their merch. Some of the merch is amazing. It meets all the sustainability metrics, people love it, but we know the packaging doesn't. And the event planners and us have a plan where we stage the product to manage the packaging before it goes on to the event. And that's a cost to us, it's a cost we pass through to the client, but it's the reality. The clients are asking us those kinds of questions and asking us to mitigate and manage packaging. Major telecom company in Canada with many retail footprints across the nation is starting to look at things like when you send merch, having a return label so that their retail store can take the merch out, put the packaging back in, and send it back to us to manage. So that's what we're starting to get, and those are fairly mainstream brands. But I think in general, what we're seeing is a shift, and we've been through all the iterations of like green products are cool, green products are too expensive, oh, that was really hip in whatever year that was, and now no one wants it anymore. And like you all have, right? We've seen it come and go. What we're seeing now, and something that really struck me a few weeks ago, there was maybe a few people here at the National Leadership Conference in Colorado, and I was on a panel with the buyer from Salesforce, and her job was to help Salesforce implement their contractual agreements with their indirect spend vendors, which is us. And in particular, focused on DE&I and sustainability. And I think what has shifted, and if I could call Salesforce and their approach the canary in the coal mine, is they're shifting from it being a product-related conversation, like is it organic, is it recycled, to what are you doing and what is your manufacturing doing? What are you doing in terms of your carbon footprint? Are you offsetting? Are you in the carbon disclosure project? Are you setting something called science-based targets? Are you have any net zero goals that are publicly published and measuring against them? Things that are hard, things that are really, really tough for our industry, especially in such a distributed supply chain. And I think that's one of the big shifts is at a time where we're thrilled with the push of new, more sustainable or ethically sourced products in our industry. Like, we're loving it. Thank you all for doing that. What we're getting now is a call for transparency and a call for kind of operational walking of the talk, not just the t-shirt, not just the eco pen. So I think that's the next shift for us as an industry, to really get at, our footprint, how we're manufacturing, where we're manufacturing, and getting more transparent. I'd say if there's a single trend that we've seen in the last 5 years, I mean, there's a bunch of them, but one of them that I think is relevant to this is that the buyer is getting younger. We're all, we can all talk about that and what that means to have a younger buyer, but one of them is that I think they're less patient with having a different B2B buying experience from a B2C buying experience. So there's this expectation that the experience they have when they're shopping online or when they're going to the grocery store and they're able to scan a code and see where that food comes from, or look on a website like Everlane or something and see where the product is made and who made it and the factory address and all those things that you can see buying a pair of Nike shoes. I can see where I can find the factory address and the phone number of the manager that runs that factory that manufactured this pair of shoes. That's what our buyers can do when they're shopping for themselves, and they're starting to expect it from us. So I think that's a big shift too in terms of what the ask is.
So Jamie, you've got a good-sized sales team, and I'm thinking that the questions that they're getting are changing. How are you coaching your salespeople? How are you onboarding new salespeople to deal with these, I think, newer questions and maybe more challenging questions?
Well, I have people to do that, and so that makes it a little easier for me. But in all honesty, it's through constant communication, and yeah, we're getting constant requests from clients about pricing for environmental goods, and hopefully a lot of the time they do it, but sometimes they don't. But I think you have to be presenting it each and every time, and I believe that's what our sales team is doing. And like, I don't think anything good is easy, and it takes a long time to learn how to purchase promotional products effectively to decrease carbon footprints, and I wish it were easier, but it's been a long learning curve, and I think we're getting better at it and getting better at communicating it to our clients. And I think year over year our environmental purchases are increasing in double digits every year. I don't think that includes our brand purchases. And I think brands are sort of environmentally friendlier products, just because I think they sit at landfills a little bit longer than maybe non-name brands. And so yeah, there's an absolute trend to be purchasing smarter, again, through the education.
So people are part of this conversation, and we know that the last couple of years hiring has become difficult, and what employees are looking for and employers has changed. So I'm curious if any of you are seeing that your commitment to sustainability, to the environment, and to culture, are you using that to attract employees, or are they asking for it? I don't know if anybody wants to comment. Heidi, you're nodding. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, definitely that is a competitive advantage for us in the hiring environment. Also, I find that being a certified woman-owned business is attractive. We hire about 90% women as it is, and that just happened by accident, but it was because of the fact that we are very flexible with our work hours so that we can accommodate children pickup times, drop-off times, spelling off with a partner, and that's something that we can offer. But for sure, when we do a job posting, we've got a blurb at the top all about our company and our commitment to sustainability, and that definitely draws people in. And we're thankful for that, just because that's just who we are. It's not something that we wrote in order to attract employees.
And I think employees see right through that, don't they, if it's just a marketing message?
Yeah, you kind of can't fake that stuff. But I'm guessing it's the same for you. It's a huge driver. It is a very rare interview with a candidate that it's not the first thing they talk about when coming to us. And so, and it kind of comes back to so then how do you live it? It's one thing to have it on your website or to talk about it, and it's another thing to have your employees show up in the morning and feel it and have it infused in the day-to-day. So, because they leave pretty quick if I think you're not walking the talk.
So how do you infuse it into the day-to-day, Denise?
I think for us, it's some of the things around flexibility is a really good example. Some formal things, we're certified living wage. We do a lot of work around education. You mentioned that, speaker series, like making sure that our staff are learning along with us, but we also really codify how we go to market. And we had dinner last night, we were chatting about this. For us, we have, throttled our product database search tool so that our team can only search approved vendors. We make it easy for them to go to market with the kind of products and supplier partners that we want, because we don't let them do anything else, right? So we've kind of made it easy for them to go to market. But we also have hard conversations as a team. And so maybe it's around Reconciliation Canada, maybe it's around, we're in Canada, a bunch of years ago, it was Canada 150. We'd have clients coming to us saying like, oh, we want to do Canada 150 and put the little colorful, maple leaf. And we had a briefing paper on what it meant to a lot of people in our country who are Indigenous, and talking about reconciliation, what does that mean as a brand, and having workshops on that with our staff, doing anti-racism work with our staff, talking to our suppliers and saying, please don't just have white people in your catalog, because that's not what our buyers look like, that's not what my team looks like. It's like we have to grow as an industry. Again, a little shout out to Spectre, because they've always been so great at that. And those are the little things that like we can work on as a movement and as a team, but specifically in the office, right? We're doing, our staff just wrote a blog post and we shared it with some of our suppliers around gendered clothing. And like, what does that conversation look like around gendered clothing, and just little things like that you have the conversations and be open. But probably the biggest thing we do that I think our team really gets is, we social hire, so we hire out of communities that are hard to employ, have barriers to access for employment, but we also, we fight the fight. And Sarah and I as leaders, I mentioned this before, I think we self-define as activists first and entrepreneurs second. So if we have an opportunity to talk about moving the dial forward on climate legislation, on reconciliation, whatever it might be, we're there as business leaders, because I think this country has seen a history of business leaders that are like oil and gas, maybe if we're lucky tech, but they're not seeing everyday people like us talk about these important issues and try and move the dial. And so that's something that we do, and I think it's something that our staff mentioned that they love, that we're out there fighting the fight, so to speak, so.
Yeah, so the really sort of unfun word called governance is something that we take really seriously at Ethical Swag. So really, what is governance and what does that really mean? But it's how we kind of bake it into everything that we do. And I was saying to Jamie at breakfast this morning, if you're making chocolate chip muffins, you can get a white cake mix and sprinkle chocolate chips on top and call it, I've got a chocolate chip muffin. But it's really easy to pull those chocolate chips off, and it's just white cake. If you bake them in, you really make a mess if you try and pick it apart. You no longer have a pretty, and that's kind of how we treat governance within our organization. And we have the conversations, and people understand, if we onboard somebody new, I've heard one of our existing folks say, Tara says it's okay to fire clients. That's just a thing, right? If a client is pushing you to do something that is not aligned with us, you don't have to ask permission. Fire them. It's okay. And they're empowered to do that. And so it's baked into everything that we do, and they understand that. And there's not one time that I've ever been upset when we've lost a sale or we've made a mistake. We just talk about it and we say, okay, could we have done that differently? No, you did a great job, or did you think about this? But on the spot, you can make decisions. And governance is really important to us. We're a very flat organization. We empower staff to make decisions on things. It's a very open environment for just about everything, and that gets around. And I think that it really helps us also with our hiring and that sort of thing.
So Jamie, as a B Corp and with the values that brings to your company, or the values that you had, you didn't become a B Corp and change your values, you had values and became a B Corp. So what should your suppliers know and the multi-line reps that are calling on you? What should they know about your values if they want to be selling to your company and they want to partner with you to bring their products to your customers?
As I said, my parents started the company in '81, and then they did build it and contributing to the communities and that we did business in, and so I think back lovingly of my father. Every supplier that would come in, my dad would ask him to buy like $100 Rotary tickets to raise money for whatever, and boy, did I lose train of that question. What was the question?
With the values of your company, what should suppliers know? And if a multi-line rep is coming to make a presentation, what do they need to know about your values to get your business and to be helpful to you?
For sure.
And your team.
And the one thing that I really didn't like about this industry when I came in 20 years ago is when I was forced to be in the industry. I didn't like the junk. There's a lot of junk back then, and there's not as much junk now, but I really didn't want to be associated with things that people grabbed and then immediately threw out, and like I was a little embarrassed about the industry back 20 years ago, and even before, like looking at the stuff my parents brought home, I was like, oh my God, like I am never doing this, and so I do believe, hopefully we've communicated effectively. If not, let's start now. Let's bring in like high quality products and products that we can stand behind and be proud of, and that don't end up in landfills.
Right. And I think Denise, you wanted your turn
I
at
have
that
something
one.
to say about this. It's as much, what does a supplier rep coming in to meet with our team need to know about us? Well, they need to know what's important to us. It's like when I'm training my sales reps, like you're always asking your clients, what's important to you? Be curious, be curious. And so people coming into us who just like flop open the suitcase and pull everything out and have no idea what's important to us, like you'll get a lot of eye rolls in that room from our team. Most of our top vendors, we also throttle who gets to do PKs with our team. Like we don't let anybody in. And so they know better now. Our favorite PKs, we've had people come in and bring their sustainability people if they have them, or a compliance person if they have them. They'll bring them or put them on the call with us. Those are often the favorite. But here's the thing that, like, it's not about what they need to know about us, it's what they need to know about their own brand. And that's the biggest failure that I see, is people come in and they know the product, they knew the new fall line or the spring line, but they don't know what their company's doing. And again, it makes it really difficult for us to sell it. It's like, tell us the stories, make your brand compelling. And this is one of my key points. Again, I'm kind of chatting to suppliers here, but our industry has really wrapped their head around this conversation through the lens of compliance. If I go to most of the supplier websites, I am often clicking a button that says compliance to get to the sustainability story. Like compliance, just to be super clear with folks, is about not breaking the law. Can you imagine that I'm going to go into a meeting, our top account in the US is Patagonia. Can you imagine I'm going to go into a meeting to sell merch to Patagonia and say, this supplier is awesome, they don't even break the law. Like, they're so great. Like, I mean, come on, that's very 1980s, right? So we have to move, and you have to share the stories. And when I hear from folks what they're doing, and what they're trying and where they're failing, those are often the stories. There's a super compelling story. I told it last night. I'm not going to mention the brand here, about them finding a failure in their supply chain, finding a subcontractor that was terrible and didn't meet their expectations. And they just told it offhand at I don't know if it was a lunch or something. They were in Vancouver, but it was a story of like kind of following literally an unraveled thread, a quality issue. And it got them to a factory that didn't meet their standards, and they walked away from the factory. I don't think they planned to tell me that story. It wasn't a scripted story, but it came out, and that story has made our company so deeply loyal to that supplier because it told us everything we needed to know about them. And so tell your stories. Don't be afraid to talk about how hard it is. And we have a word we use all the time at Fairware called flawsome, which is like, we're like awesomely flawed, or like flawed awesome, or whatever it is, but we say flawsome all the time, like we're flawsome, right? Because we're not getting it right. And we're really seen as market leaders in this space. Like, people look to us as the OG brand around sustainability in the promotional product space. We get it wrong all day long. And we talk to our clients about it. And you know what it does is it makes them feel like they're part of the journey. And that's kind of what I want to feel with our supplier base, as part of the journey. Because I tell you, if I know you're trying, even if you're screwing up every day, I will forgive you and keep sending you POs. If I have no idea what you're doing, and you're not being transparent and talking about the, fighting the fight, whatever that fight is, whether it's packaging or carbon, it's really hard for me to keep sending you my money when someone else is sharing the journey and kind of on the journey. So I think tell the stories, move beyond the idea of a compliance report or compliance reporting, and just say to folks, like, we're going to try and make our business better in a whole ton of ways, and here's how we're starting, and be open with it. And if there's any sort of dream I have, it's that in a year or two, when I look at my top vendors, there's no button that says compliance. It's a section underneath a broader, more strategic button that's maybe ESG or corporate social responsibility, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't even matter. But get out of the mindset of compliance, because it's just not that impressive that you're not breaking the law.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see that slide. I'm hoping you have a slide that you share that says we don't break the law as part of your presentation. It's it's like the slides.
Jamie, he's awesome. He's not a convicted felon.
Right. Well, that's good. Thanks for confirming that for us.
True.
So Heidi, as a supplier, Denise wants you to share your story with her, and so how do you, for distributors who are not thinking about sustainability or not thinking about the environment yet, that haven't been challenged that way, how as a supplier can you help educate a distributor and help them understand how they can shift the conversation with their customers?
Well, these are amazing times because we have so many modes of communication. So education is easy, as long as we as the supplier put the time into it. And we will gladly work with people at all stages of their sustainability journey and provide resources. So we do case studies, we write white papers on sustainability, breaking it down. There are so many acronyms and different terms, different compliance programs. So we really see ourselves as partners, and we can provide the education because we've learned this material ourselves. We know it. So it's we're happy to pass that along with our distributor partners and empower them. I think that one of the interesting things about TikTok and Instagram Reels, unboxing videos, that really shows the backstage of a company in a way that we would not have had some decades ago. And so the transparency that people are asking for, that Denise is talking about, we see that in the way the backstage of a company. Front stage is what we would present, and the backstage is our operations. But everybody's getting a peek into the backstage, and it's holding us all accountable as manufacturers, challenging us to do more. And then in the case where you already are doing good, it's an easy way to show that and communicate it to customers. So I think it's a really exciting time to be a partner that way, and we really love it when distributors look to us to be partners and to be able to provide the information that we can on the good stuff that we're doing, on the things that our vendors are doing, on the things that they can be doing, and to take that valued vendor relationship seriously. That's how we would see ourselves.
So Tara, how can suppliers help you with your company's goals and what you're trying to do? What do the suppliers in the room need to know, and how can they help you make your job easier and really get to what you're trying to achieve?
It's so, I'll tell a story about socks, right? So we just automatically do a header card on socks so that they don't get individually shrink wrapped to keep the pairs together, right? So it's just automatic. We just don't. We always do a header card when we're doing socks. And we say on everything, please, minimize your plastic. We talk to our suppliers about, the packaging and everything else. And a client got hundreds of pair of socks, all individually. And they called and they just said, we are really mad. Like really, really mad. And we had done everything we possibly could, we thought. And I'm sure you guys probably have the same sort of challenges. And I'd love somehow suppliers to really look at the packaging side. That's one of the biggest things for us. We can get the storytelling, we can dig deeper, we can have the conversations with our reps, we can say, okay, help us understand better about this product, et cetera, et cetera. But it breaks down once that PO gets submitted, and we seem to have no control over how things are getting shipped. And I'd love to see if we can sort of fix that gap with our suppliers and have a little bit more insight other than, on every one of our POs, please minimize plastic. We talk to our suppliers, we meet with them, how can you have more sustainable packaging and that sort of thing. And then 1,000 pair of socks get shipped out with the header cards, and we've specifically done that so that they stay in pairs. And we've specifically said, there was one of my reps, we don't have salespeople, but one of our in-house people sent 5 emails saying, please make sure the socks do not have plastic on them. And then we just stopped using that supplier, right? We just said, we're not doing it anymore. And they met a certain criteria for us for a price point, and we just said, we're not gonna have that price point anymore. We're gonna only use our suppliers that do biodegradable bags around their socks or don't do any plastic. So that's one of the things. After the PO is submitted, having a little more insight into how things are being produced and shipped, I think, would be helpful for us.
So Denise, do you have insights on how you keep getting what you want beyond that PO, like where Tara's saying that you ask for all these things? How do you make sure you're getting what you want?
Well, you don't, and part of it is because you put it on the PO. For us, we'll do things like we'll get a letter signed by our client saying they'll accept a certain percentage of damaged goods, because that's the fear, right? And we could have a whole panel on packaging, but the most unsustainable product is damaged product. So we have to get packaging right so that product is protected and the logo is protected, and nothing more. So what's that magic sweet spot? And there's a lot of institutional barriers. We were chatting about this last night, like packaging, like insurance programs for suppliers, where they can actually claim against damaged products if it's not received, and it's, that insurance policy might have a packaging protocol baked into it. But what happens is, you get your PO in, you got your letter, it's on the PO, you do whatever you can, and that memo doesn't get back down to the packaging line for that small portion of the day for people who've been packing boxes the same way for maybe 20 years, And so it is a big, those things are big issues. But I think it starts with finding the right vendor partners. For us, it's really about culling out folks that aren't moving forward in these conversations, whether it's packaging or whether it's anything else. And it's finding the right vendor partners where needed, getting into the hard conversations and asking the hard questions. And for us, we have a supplier code of conduct. We're actually just updating it right now. So suppliers in the room, in the next 4 to 6 weeks, you'll all be getting a little, our survey. And we've updated it because every 4 or 5 years, a new issue emerges. So a new question for us is around supply chain mapping for cotton coming out of China for the Uyghur issue, which is becoming a bigger and bigger issue, in particular with our U.S. clients, and just should be a big issue globally. So we go to our suppliers and we collect the information, and then we have the conversation with them about where there might be gaps or where we can move forward. So, I don't think there's any magic answer here except know who you're working with beyond the product. I think we just get into the groove of what's the cool new stuff, what's the cool new stuff. And I think there's a lot of people in this room that probably let their staff pitch whatever they want, whatever they can find in Sage or whatever they can find in ESP. And if you're doing that, you are putting your brand at risk, you're putting your clients' brands at risk. You have to kind of tighten up and find that group of suppliers. And I think the suppliers that are ignoring this conversation are going to get less and less phone calls as we move forward, because I do think that there is a market pull right now from all of our clients. And I can tell you, we used to get calls from what, are kind of the people you think would call us, right? Organic food companies and outdoor retail and, renewable energy. We'd get calls from folks like that. I cannot tell you, like, the calls we are getting from the most mainstream conservative, like, brands you would think don't even know how to say sustainability are calling us all day long. Like, they want a piece of this. They're trying to figure it out. They're trying to identify where they have risk profiles, how they can engage staff because they can't get people. So maybe if they were a little cooler or had organic hoodies, they think they might be able to get more staff. I don't know what it is. But there's a really serious market pull, and I think that is what, it's like if supply chain is the tail, like, it needs to follow. So, yeah, there's no magic. What are we doing that's different? We're just picking good vendors that are having these conversations and willing to move the dial forward.
So Jamie, we've been talking here about clients are asking for this, but are you selling to potential clients that you can offer this? Does it go both ways?
I think I understand your question, and so let me try to answer it the way that I understood it, and you correct me if I'm wrong. I really believe that we choose who we want to do business with, and we're not a good fit for everybody, and we try to sell them the service and the value, and if they want to buy on price all the time, probably not a long-term fit for us, and so I think we research the hell out of the prospects and our clients and try to understand their needs, and if it sort of fits with our needs, and then it's probably a good fit, and it's been a success for us, and we probably won't stray from that sort of aspect of the strategy.
And Terry, you talked about allowing your staff to fire clients, and I think all of us who have ever fired a client know that can be one of the most empowering things you ever do. So. For you, are you out looking for clients in a certain type of client? Are clients calling you? And how is your positioning sort of changing the way you prospect or bring in new clients?
So we don't have a sales team, and we've to date not done any marketing. So we just have folks that are looking for, that's not the long-term plan. But we've been so busy in building our structure so that people can't pull the chocolate chips off the top of our muffin that we just want to get that right. And so we've just been slow, honestly, on those other things because I just felt that it wasn't sustainable, to use that word, to get out of the gates running and try and fix things after they break. I was more interested in building a different kind of business, and that's where I've really focused my energy. However, we have incoming, we've experienced double. I launched more or less. I incorporated back in 2010, and then there was a whole lot of things that happened. Parents' houses burning down and all kinds of personal things that I just sort of parked it. And once I got into my 50s and my kids were a little older, I said, okay, I got fuel in the tank and it's now time to do something. And so, I'm a late bloomer from an entrepreneurial standpoint. 2018 was when I sort of launched Ethical Swag. And so in 2018, we did well. In 2019, we doubled sales. 2020, we all know what happened there. But we did still increase by 40%, and we've doubled again, and we've doubled again. But we had the benefit and the good fortune of very low overhead during, a very scary time, what we call 2020 and 2020, the last 2 years. So we sort of dug in even further. And so our customers are just finding us because we are just, and we're honest. To pick up on what Denise was saying, we're not perfect. We make mistakes all the time. We use within the office, the virtual office. I've met more McCabe staff today than I've met my own staff because we're virtual. And we say progress over perfection. And we're very clear with our clients, right, when that happens. We're like, work with us, let's figure it out. And they're good with that. And they're coming to us.
So you've all in some ways talked about learning from failure. So when we talk about either people and the way you work with people in your company or sustainability. Can you each share with us a failure and what you've learned from that failure? Because I think it's, there's a lot of business school theory around the idea of learning from failure. So I'd love to know if somebody wants to, if all of you could share something where you failed and what you've learned from it. I'm now putting you all on the spot. You're all not making eye contact with me, but that's where I think we learn, right? So I'd love to know if somebody want to kick that off and share a failure and what you learned from it.
Well, I can talk about our packaging initiative since that's been in the forefront of what we've been talking about today. And so that's been on our strategic plan for the last 2 years. And the reason it's still on the strategic plan and we're still working on it is because it is really tough. As we were talking about, we want to get the product to our customer in good shape and usable shape. And there's a reason plastic has been used up until now in terms of the protective properties, especially with paper. And the speed and the value in terms of using that, which is of course baked into the pricing of our product. So getting away from that has been a complex project with many twists and turns, exploring corn packaging, which we do use, but really digging deep into the actual compostability of corn plastic. And can you put that in your home composter? You need an industrial composter. Okay, so on to the next product or packaging material. And so that has been one of our most complicated projects and initiatives that we've undertaken over the last few years. And we have finally made the move to paper packaging and biodegradable packaging, and for certain segments and other segments we're still using plastic, but there we have the conversation, well, at least seal it up so that bag can be used again for something else. Don't seal it in a way that it has to be ripped. And it's just multi-leveled, multifaceted, and I'm not content to just pick something and say that's good enough. So now we can tell our customers that we've figured it out. We've got to keep iteratively doing better and better. So our fiscal year closes out December 31. We're going to have achieved certain packaging goals, but the packaging will be on the strategic plan again for 23.
So Denise, I shouldn't ask you, I think based on what you said before, to share a failure. I should ask you to share a flaw, right?
Yeah. Well, we have so many to choose from. But I think it would be kind of criminal not to talk about kitting and drop shipping in an industry event where we've just convened for the first time in a long time. And so I'm just racking my brain for one of the litany of failures over the last 2 or 3 years that we've gone through in regards to kitting, fulfillment, and drop shipping to residential addresses. So I think, it's almost like I don't even need to pick one. It's just sort of they bleed into each other in terms of our capability, our suppliers' capability to manage what is a new norm. And that's another trend that's not going away. Like the mobile hybrid workforce and the need for us to be able to get merchandise to people who are hosting virtual events in conjunction with in-person events, and or employee onboarding kits to people who are going into an office versus not going into an office. And I think that's where the majority of our epic screw-ups have been over the last couple of years. And part of it is it's not our wheelhouse, but we thought it was for a little while, or it's not our supplier's wheelhouse, but they thought it was for a little while. Some still think it is, and maybe they're building competencies and capacity to do so. But I think for us is just in the same way that we got very strategic about our decorator relationships about 5 or 6 years ago, where we started assessing them, interviewing them, and really building a partnership model with decorators, which has served us well. We're going out and finding folks who can kit, folks who can fill last mile shippers, global logistics partners who are different than the kitters. Because again, we thought, the kitters can do it. Surely they do that all day long. Well, they don't do that all day long. They put things in boxes and not necessarily can manage, global distribution or complex distribution. So I think for us, that's an interesting area, and it's also an interesting area in the context of sustainability. How do you find those partners? And we've actually, on the kitting side, been really, they're really surprised to find that there's a whole movement in that space and in that industry for social enterprises, for employing folks with again, barriers to employment. And so we found some great partners all over North America that really fit our social mandate, that can deliver that for us. And now, our next challenge is to find carriers and shipping logistics partners that think the same way we do, that can provide climate reporting and the things that we need or expect. But yeah, that's like for us, it's just getting the right thing to the right people when we have gone from shipping to head offices to shipping to 2,000 homes. Like it's just it's a completely different business. And we're all, I'm imagining, trying to catch up. But that's where our big fails have been in the last couple of years.
And it's so interesting, comes to mind for me is at the beginning of the pandemic and the ship to home, thinking about all of these companies that were handing over the home addresses of their employees. And,
Sending us spreadsheets.
yeah, here's everybody's home address, their home phone number, maybe their date of birth. Like, what else can we hand over? So I'm sure there's some challenges along the way there. Jamie, she handed you the mic.
Yeah, thank you, Denise. Yeah, what we do isn't easy, and lots of opportunities daily that we can learn from and improve on. I'd say the biggest failure would be communication breakdown with either suppliers or internal stakeholders. It's difficult working with people, and losing communication and constant back and forth is difficult. And so I'd say that was probably the biggest failure that we've had.
And Tara, do you want to share a learning experience with us?
Oh my God, I've got so many. I'm sitting here, like the bucket of failures is about this high, and it's kind of how you learn, right? And so that's sort of our attitude. And as a sort of nimble young company, it's sort of like, oh, that doesn't look very hard, like famous last words. And then my operations manager is pulling her hair out because she's now, from a kidding standpoint, there's one of our clients, and they have so many different sizes and different sort of versions of their welcome kits and their swag packs. I think she's on her 900th SKU to put into our system. And then they're like, can you give us the tracking number for Fred? Right? And it's like, now she solved for it, thankfully. She's a professional engineer that likes numbers and has figured that stuff out, but it's hard. And so I think, is it a failure? We said, early COVID days, we said yes to a lot of things, not knowing how to operationalize that. And thankfully we said yes. There was one organization, it was a not-for-profit women national organization that said, we'd like to raise money and sell product and have an online store and all that kind of stuff. And so we did that actually. I said to the team, we're gonna test this, but we're not gonna charge them. We're just gonna see what this looks like in terms of pick and pack and that sort of thing. And we learned really quickly, we will not collect money on behalf of our clients ever. Like that's a hard sort of line in the sand. We don't do that. But we will do pick and pack because we figured out how to solve for that, and that sort of thing. So yeah, lots of mistakes. Thankfully, none of them too big because we figured that's a great way to learn. So we try and not take on, we've had large global brands come to us and we literally say, no, sorry, we can't help you right now. We're just not ready. We test small, iterate, launch is kind of how we try and approach the stuff that we don't know. And we make a lot of mistakes.
Before we sort of move to wrap up, I'm curious if anybody joining us in the audience has any questions. Come on up, Danny, and then maybe Jamie will follow you, it looks like.
Yeah, thank you all. Really insightful, interesting conversation. Denise, you mentioned Patagonia earlier, and they come to mind because I know they made a decision as a company to stop allowing corporate organizations to put logos because they want to extend the product life. How does upcycling and recycling fit into this conversation? I know we're all concerned about brand fill and the product that we get out ending up in a landfill somewhere.
That's a great question. It's actually, when I think about what's coming next for our industry, the conversations, I think we call it end of life. So some of our clients are like, okay, can you talk about the end of life in the pitch? So we have, in fact, the same client that had we got the account of the people that bought the vest from Burma. We eventually, became a company and got that account. And they ask us to put what can we do at the end of the useful life of this product into every product description when we pitch them, right? So it's a pretty good example. So for us, it's looking at finding, we have textile recycling partners in the US and Canada, for example. We can manage take-back programs. We offer it as a service when we're pitching stores and such to help manage dead stock, et cetera, that kind of thing. And it gets really complicated when you have product that's not designed to be dismantled or repaired or recycled or upcycled. I know a couple of people in our industry, like mainstream players, have started to do upcycling. That's been really helpful for us. We have a couple of partners that are not easy to work with. So having a partner we love and trust come into the game and being able to send dead stock, banners or billboards or whatever it might be into a trusted supplier to upcycle is a great win. But it's tough, and there's not always a lot to do, and often those conversations are like, yeah, we don't know. Or, yeah, maybe we can recycle that. We'll check. Oh, no, we can't. There's no feasible way to do that in Canada or in the region that they're in. So I think, that's where we need to get to, and it's really about the product designers. Like, I was on a podcast with someone from HIT, who, is a fairly, broad, large-scale commodity supplier, and the person on the podcast was their head of product development, and really thinking about circularity and really thinking about what are the polymers that we're putting into these products. Like, can we not have it all be 7, which just ends up in the landfill? Can we do a single resin like a polypropylene or a PET that at least makes it a little easier to get it into a system? So I think those are some of the conversations. There's a huge opportunity for that. I don't know, a lot of you probably know Mir, the brand, they have a whole thing. I think it's kind of hilarious. It's a good example of just someone having a really simple idea and then marketing the heck out of it. I can't remember what they're calling it, but they're essentially just marketing printing over misprints, just print over it. And it's like, isn't that awesome? We're saving the world. And it is kind of a great story, but it's just a simple thing. And I think seeing suppliers offer that, it's like, oh, here's a whole pile of rejects. You can have them. We'll print your client's logo over these logos, but we're just going to tell the whole story that this is a reject and it was kind of destined for a lower use, and we've put it into the economy, so to speak. And just imagine, that's a supplier with a whole bunch of misprints who just found a way, to your point, that kind of ingenuity to re-engage that product into their sales cycle. I thought it was pretty brilliant. So I do think there's a huge opportunity there.
And your last comment there, just highlights sustainability doesn't have to cost more. In fact, they've taken a cost and turned it into a revenue opportunity. So that's a great story. Jamie, I think you had a question, then we're going to wrap up.
Yeah, my question is when it comes to ethical behavior, I just did an order for a client, and it was with a Canadian manufacturer, and they have been through the ringer. The factories in Canada have been put out of business by overseas corporations that, have lower wage workers in third world countries that, don't have the quality of life that we have here in North America. And is it ethical to be buying overseas when, we just can't when we're undermining North American manufacturing? I mean, I love the idea of, being the most ethical we can be, but too often it seems to me that there's a lot of products that come from the other side of the world, and
I'm going to let Tara take a cut at this, but I'll just say that there's probably sweatshops within about 5 kilometers from where we're sitting. So I think the narrative that made in Canada is all good or made in USA is all good. The first factory that I was involved in leaving at Mountain Equipment Co-op for human rights abuses was in Vancouver. So I think that's a bit of a, like, that's an issue. And too, like, thinking about a garment worker job in Bangladesh or Mumbai can be a really great, like, middle-class job. So I think it's a super complex global issue. And, but I do think it's important to look at it at the factory level and, like, have great factories, because you can have terrible factories in Canada and we're not moving the dial forward, and you can have exceptional factories in China, and we are, you know, so that's a whole other panel. But I do think it's a, you know, it is a challenge, and your clients are going to help you drive that, because for some folks, it's about ethical supply chains writ large, irrespective globally of where they're coming from. And for some folks, it really is about made in Canada, and we do want to support that. But there's a lot of complexities there, like tariffs on textiles. Like, when the textile industry moved, that was the death knell for the cut and sew industry in North America, because we have to pay tariffs on textiles to get them back into the country to cut and sew. So it's just that the math doesn't work. And so it's, you know, it's a conversation with Ottawa around tariffs on textiles coming into the country. Like, it starts to get so layered and complex, but I don't know, it's just, it's such a can of worms.
Well, is that something that our, like, association or an association should be lobbying about then? I mean, not that our association does lobbying, but yeah, the issue ends up being far bigger than us. Yeah. And like, if you're talking about Canadian or North American factories, because I really want to include the US in this, because, I mean, economically we're integrated and it's all one. And, but, you know, when things come from overseas, and so much of what we sell comes from overseas, like, it's great that, and it's almost elite clients too, that's the other side of the coin, is that when you can stand there and say, well, we only sell to certain clients who have standards that, you know, educate their workforce about what they're actually buying, and also have the money to pay 3 times for a North American made product than what they could pay for with it overseas. You know, these are big issues that come into, you know, and yeah, I mean, I can admire anybody who could, especially these days, turn away clients and just say, well, you're not good enough for us because you're not going to buy ethically. And
so, Tara, I'm going to ask you just for a quick comment, and then we're going to wrap up here.
Yeah, I think it really does come back to knowing who you're buying from and that sort of thing, right? Because, like you said, Canada and the U.S., it doesn't mean that there's not sweatshops. But an example that I will give is I met with Jeremy from Sanmar US, the president of Sanmar, and I said, okay, I want to understand some of what you're doing around sustainability and your manufacturing facilities. And he said, well, we have this line that's manufactured in Honduras, and we are investing in the textile workers with sustainable communities, and the manufacturing facility is powered by solar energy. And he was able to document and show me all the things that they were doing. So it was a lower price point t-shirt made in Honduras. And so we're all about offering, again, it's progress over perfection for us, and transparency. So we say, if you can't afford North American, and we have certain North American manufacturers that we use, here's an alternative that's made in Honduras, and we can tell you about that. So it's just, don't blindly go forward, I guess is what I would say, is look under the hood, take a look around, talk to people that know, and then stand true. Like, just say, okay, it's okay, we're not the right fit for you. We don't have the right sort of product to sell you. You might want to go get it from somewhere else, which we do all the time. If we don't have something at the right price point with a supplier that we vetted, we say to people, go somewhere else. And that's okay too. There's no judgment. It's just the way we do our business. And we know there'll be another customer around the corner. But just look under the hood, talk to the right people, and know that there's no such thing as good and bad in my, well, there is good and bad, but there's levels of good and there's levels of bad. And if we are going to sit here and say we have to be perfect, we're not going to move the needle. We just need transparency and awareness, and let's not blindly go forward. That would be my...
What I love about all the conversations we've been having is, you know, this association has the word professional in its name. We're a trade association that actually puts the people in the trade association, which I think so much of what we're talking about is relationships and managing those relationships, which, you know, is why I think we're all here today, is those relationships. And so it's really nice to see that, you know, relationships and that professionalism, being professionals, is I think a big part of what drives this, and not selling an item, but selling, based on what your clients need and those relationships and that. So I'm looking at my watch. I'm going to ask everybody. I'm going to start with you, Jamie. Your parting 30-second thoughts for today. There you
Sorry,
go.
I turned this off. I thought it was off the hook. My parting words is, I don't know, be authentic. I call myself an imperfect environmentalist, and I think it has to start from within and do things yourself before you can ask other people to follow suit.
All right, Denise.
I started with this and I'll end with this. I think sustainability is what will future-proof our industry and your brands. So don't do it at your peril.
And I would encourage everyone to decide today to take one step, do one thing, and that'll be the start of more. And also to encourage you to take the seed paper, note cards off of the table when you go. Feel free to take those home and plant them.
I think as an industry, we have a huge opportunity around sustainability, and I think that the more of us that sort of get on board and work together and see it as an opportunity rather than just another thing you have to deal with, I think that it's something that we can really, if we can as an industry embrace, I think we are going to see the real positive impacts. So I just like to see a lot more collaboration. We collaborate on the stage here. I think it's important that we collaborate, we talk, we share stories, and as an industry, we move the needle as it relates to sustainability.
Well, I want to thank all of you. Thank you so much for being part of this great conversation. I think we've identified the next 10 panel discussions, so I appreciate that. This is a panel that represents different parts of our industry, people from different places. I think it's the most geographically diverse panel we've had in some time, which was not by design, but a happy coincidence for us. I really enjoyed the conversation. I've learned a lot. I hope everybody in the audience has learned a lot. There's a lot of these conversations that have to continue, and the good news is we've got the next 2 days to continue these conversations together. So I really want to thank everybody for coming. We are opening the show floor in about 10 minutes, so I know suppliers need to run to their booths and do those final merchandising touches. So thank you, everybody, and I want to, and I'll hand them to everybody in just a moment, but I want to thank PCNA, who's given us a gift for each of our panelists, which is a 10-tree product, so I think that fits into our conversation today. So thank you to PCNA for being our sponsor, and remember, get your wristbands for tonight to join us at our party and our awards. We're really excited to celebrate the industry tonight together, so let's come together tonight and do that and spend some quality time together. So thank you, everybody, so much for being here, and thank you.